It's the anniversary of 9/11. We're going to take a moment to talk about what that means for this country with national security, plus a major problem at the southern border as well. And finally, a governor has gone rogue, trying to take away the Second Amendment rights of all of the citizens of her state. It's Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, nice to be with you as always. And we're shooting this the day before 9/11 because on Monday morning, you're going to be at Ground Zero. And I want you to tell everybody a little bit about what you're going to be doing in New York on this. It's a day that I'm so glad that so many people have it, that we take that moment, that we pause. It's also a painful reminder of this country, of what we went through, and also the real threats that I still think we have against this country, especially with an open border as well.
Well, 22 years ago, on September 11th, 2001, our nation endured the worst terrorist attack in history. It is striking now that seniors in college weren't alive when that happened, that many young people, many people in their 20s, have no recollection whatsoever of what happened. You and I both remember that. We've talked on this podcast about where each of us was on September 11th. It was a moment that was utterly horrified as we watched nearly 3,000 people murdered by a deliberate act of terrorism. It was also a moment that was, at the same time that it was horrifying, it was simultaneously inspiring. We saw acts of heroism. The first responders, the New York Fire Department, the New York Police Department, those officers, those firefighters who ran into the buildings. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be at the fire station that sustained the most losses on 9/11, at a memorial service there, remembering those firefighters. And I have to say, as we were watching that morning, and you saw people running, covered in smoke and ash, running away from the buildings, the only people that were running the other direction were the firefighters and the police officers and the first responders. And they ran up the stairs while the buildings were on fire. And I will never forget the moment when the first tower began to fall. And I was in D.C. watching on TV with utter horror as you realize that thousands of people are being murdered before your very eyes. It is a moment to give thanks for the heroism we saw. It's also a moment to remember the unity we had.
It was incredible.
It was extraordinary after 9/11 that the petty bickering that consumes so much of today just went away.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most extraordinary moments was when President George W. Bush, shortly after the attack, went to New York and was standing on a pile of rubble and was talking to the crowd with a bullhorn. And a man called out from the crowd, said, "We can't hear you." And he said, "Well, I can hear you. And soon the whole world's going to hear you too."
It was a moment that you also knew people were angry. They wanted revenge. They wanted to go after the people that did this to us. And I do worry that we've lost some of that focus.
Yeah.
You look at the border now. We have a wide open border. It was something that was talked about after 9/11. You have a border that could allow any terrorist to come across now. That's the easiest way to get into this country, would be come across our southern border. And I worry, and we've caught people on the terrorist watch list coming across our southern border. I worry that we have forgotten the lessons of 9/11 and what security looks like. We've done it at the airports, and we've kept that up, right? You go to the airport, I think most people feel very secure when they fly, the way that we've changed the way that we do security. Yet we have this wide open southern border.
Well, listen, listeners of Verdict, I think, played a real role recently responding to the Biden administration's attempt to take the death penalty off the table for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the mastermind planners of 9/11, and we devoted an entire podcast to exposing that, and I think many people spoke out and were outraged, and at least right now it appears the Biden administration is backing away from that. And so that was something significant that Verdict listeners and viewers a difference that collectively we made. When it comes to the southern border, you're right. We have a vulnerability on our southern border every month. People are coming across who are on the terror watch list. The numbers dwarf the number of known terrorists who would come in prior to Joe Biden. Joe Biden's open borders are many things. They're an invitation for people to die and for cartels to brutalize children and to sexually assault women, and they're an invitation to flood this country with narcotics and fentanyl that's murdering over 100,000 people, and they're an invitation for Mexican drug lords to become multi-billionaires globally. But it's also an invitation to terrorists. If you're the next planner of 9/11, it's obvious where you go.
Yeah.
You go to Mexico, and you come right across, and Joe Biden and the idiots in his administration will fly you to wherever you want to go in this country, and you can carry out your terror attack. And sadly, every day that we have an open border under Joe Biden and the Democrats, the odds of another major attack in this country, major terror attack, go up systematically. They are exposing us. They are exposing vulnerabilities, whether it is someone trying to hijack an airplane or whether it is a suicide bomber in a mall or an amusement park or a concert or what have you. We are vulnerable to global terrorism because this administration has thrown open the border and will not protect us.
Does it take another terrorist attack for them to understand this vulnerability? Because they've been reminded it. Law enforcement has reminded them. You've seen the reports. You've said in Congress as you've been briefed on the border and the people that we've caught on the terrorist watch list. I mean, there's a lot of people we've caught that are on the terrorist watch list for a reason who we've caught coming across. My worry is how many have come across that we don't know about, that we have no idea where they are in this country or what they may be planning next. And why does it take something on the scale of a 9/11 for them to wake up to the obvious, hey, this is a bad national security decision. Forget immigration, illegal immigration. This is a national security issue, plain and simple.
Look, 5.8 million people that Border Patrol has encountered and apprehended in 2.5 years under Joe Biden, an additional 1.4 million people that are categorized as gotaways. In other words, they saw them, but they got away and didn't apprehend them. So we know a minimum of 7.2 million illegal aliens have come in under Joe Biden. That is orders of magnitude worse than we have ever seen in the history of this country. And you know, you ask what's it going to take for them to realize, well, the sad thing is today's Democrats put partisan politics above everything, above humanity, above deaths, above sexual assaults, above drug overdoses, above terrorism, above crime, above public safety. None of that matters. Partisan politics is their only priority.
There was something else recently that you and I talked about in this pod, and I think it's also a point to look at now with the border, and that's transportation across the border. You've been working on legislation to get new roads across the southern border for commerce to come across. I was shocked to find out last week that about only 20% of trucks that come across the border right now are screened, meaning that if you're a bad guy, you got about an 80% chance of getting nefarious products, whether that's fentanyl, human trafficking, sex trafficking, countless other things that could be used in terrorism across the border. That's a pretty good chance you're going to make it across if only 20% of those trucks are even looked at. These new roads are saying with the new technology, we'd be able to screen virtually 100% of the trucks. Why is it taking so long for people to wake up to that idea as well? Because you've had people that you've had to fight on this issue. Well,
look, I will say the technology that Customs and Border Patrol uses to screen trucks and commercial traffic is actually quite good. I've been down there. I've seen it. They have the ability. They're X-raying trucks. They look the effort. I will say the traffickers, when it comes to narcotics, are exceptionally good at hiding things. They hide them in fruits and vegetables. They hide them in all sorts of manufactured goods. They hide them in trucks. They hide them, but the technology is very good, and they do a good job of identifying people who are likely to be trafficking and people who are have demonstrated that they are reliable commercial travelers. And so our exposure right now is not coming through legal commercial traffic.
It's just the wide open border itself.
Our exposure is coming because Joe Biden will not enforce the law. And when someone crosses illegally, he lets them go. That is the heart of it. If you let everyone go when they come illegally, you create what Joe Biden has created, the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history. And I got to say, where it's going right now is really pissing me off. Because just this last week, the story broke that the Biden administration is contemplating trying to leave every one of those illegal immigrants in Texas. And I got to tell you,
this is after liberals are crying around the country because they're actually having to deal with some illegal immigration in their cities like New York.
So we've seen utter and complete hypocrisy from liberals across the country, and the response of the Biden White House is, well, maybe we'll just leave them all in Texas. We hate Texas.
Yeah, so let them drown.
Let's just flood the state of Texas with illegal immigration, and basically what Biden is proposing is building a wall north of Texas.
Yeah.
He wants to trap illegal immigrants in Texas and not let them go to blue states where they might upset Democrats.
Is that legal? You're a lawyer, and I saw this plan, and I want to read it the way it was put. This report shows that President Joe Biden and his team are, quote, considering a plan to require illegal immigrants with doubtful asylum claims. I want you to deal with what that would even mean. Okay, what is a doubtful asylum claim to remain in Texas? This is the move that would force the Lone Star State to absorb tens of thousands of illegal aliens, quote, every single week. Why? Biden administration officials who spoke anonymously to the Los Angeles Times said the plan is being considered so that if newly arrived border crossers fail their initial asylum screenings, so this would be the worst in essence, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agents can more easily, they claim, locate and deport illegal aliens within Texas since they could be close to the U.S.-Mexico border, quote unquote.
Look, this is utter and complete garbage. It is nakedly political. It is blatantly illegal. By the way, people with dubious asylum claims, that means they don't have asylum claims. It means they know they don't have asylum claims. It means that Joe Biden's open borders, they want to let them go anyway. These are the people that they are shipping to every community in every state in the union. And what's happening is suddenly blue state Democrats have noticed, holy crap, this is a problem. And this is why, look, sometimes when I say things like the Biden White House puts partisan politics above everything, you know, part of me has a hesitancy and says, boy, that sounds really harsh. Like I can hear Heidi saying to me, as you know, Heidi listens to the podcast, I can hear Heidi saying, oh, come on, Ted, that's too knee-jerk. There is no other explanation for this. The reason they want to target Texas is because they hate Texas, because Texas is red. Listen, 7.2 million people have crossed illegal under Joe Biden. Is he really proposing let's keep all 7.2 million in Texas? We've got 30 million Texans.
Yeah.
He wants to take us to 37 million Texans and have a quarter of the state be illegal, and he wants to do that so that he doesn't upset Democrats in blue states. It is blatantly illegal, and it is illegality piled on illegality. Look, current federal law requires that he deport these people.
He's not doing that.
He's defying federal law. He doesn't want them to stay in Texas so it's easier for them to deport them. He wants them to stay in Texas so that Democrat mayors and Democrat governors don't get mad at him, because he is looking, this is a partisan plan to try to turn America permanently Democrat. And if a lot of people have to die to get their partisan plan over the finish line, so be it. But I got to tell you, look, in the Senate, there is no limit to what I am willing to do to fight to stop this. If he thinks he can insulate the rest of the country and protect Democrats from the consequences of their lawlessness and force Texas to pay for it, that is utter and complete garbage.
I want to tell you about our friends at Patriot Mobile. If you've got a cell phone and your cell phone is with Big Mobile, you may not realize where your money's going when you pay your bill. You may actually be supporting groups like Planned Parenthood. Did you know that Big Mobile supports Planned Parenthood in a big way? That is where Patriot Mobile comes in. Now, you get the same great coverage that you're used to right now all over the country. You get to keep your same cell phone number if you switch if you want to. You can keep your same cell phone you have with you right now or upgrade to a new one. But the difference is when you pay your bill, you're actually supporting conservative causes and organizations with every single bill you pay at no extra charge to you. We're talking about standing up for your First and your Second Amendment rights, the rights of the unborn, standing with our veterans, our first responders, our heroes that protect us each and every day. This is why I want you to check out Patriot Mobile. So go online to patriotmobile.com/verdict. That's patriotmobile.com/verdict. They have a 100% U.S.-based team that helps you change and makes it easy for you to change your cell phone service. The other thing is, if you have a business or a small business, they have a set of people that just work with changing over multiple lines for hardworking small business owners as well. 878-PATRIOT is the number. That's 878-PATRIOT. Use the promo code VERDICT. You'll get the best deals of the year plus free activation. patriotmobile.com/verdict or 878-PATRIOT. You talked about the hypocrisy a moment ago of what we've been hearing. And there was a moment this last week which I didn't actually laugh. At first, my response was to laugh at Mayor Adams in New York City, basically declaring a state of emergency, saying we can't handle this, we're totally overrun. And I wanted to laugh, but I'm also like, yeah, welcome to the world of what we deal with every hour. Not every day, not every week like you guys are freaking out over. The number of illegals coming across the border in Texas, as you described it, we're talking about hundreds of thousands per month. This is every hour for us. And yet he had this like dire warning to New York City. Take a look.
We turned this city around in 20 months. And then what happened? Started with a madman down in Texas, decided he wanted to bus people up to New York City. 110,000 migrants. We have to feed, clothe, house, educate the children, wash their laundry sheets, give them everything they need, health care. And this team here, we stated, let's do everything possible before we have to push it out into neighborhoods and communities. Month after month, I stood up and I said, this is going to come to a neighborhood near you. Well, we're here. We're here. We're getting no support on this national crisis, and we're receiving no support. And let me tell you something, New Yorkers. Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City.
If you use his logic, then this issue will destroy the United States of America. It would certainly destroy Texas if we continue on this road that we're on right now. And he's begging for help. And I'm like, come down to Texas. You think it's bad in New York City with 110,000? I'd say at this point, double it. Let's send twice as many busloads up to New York, because then maybe he'll talk to these other liberals and they'll realize, hey, we got to secure the southern border.
Well, he complains. He says we're getting no help and no support with a national crisis. Well, no kidding, Eric. What do you think we're getting?
Yeah.
Zero support. And I love that he starts with a madman down in Texas. All right, newsflash. The border crisis was not caused by Governor Greg Abbott. You know who the border crisis was caused by? Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. You know, if Eric Adams doesn't like this border crisis, he ought to pick up the phone and call someone who lives in Manhattan. His name is Charles Schumer. And Chuck Schumer has defended Joe Biden's open borders every single day for the last 2.5 years. He's blocked every effort to secure the border. He's blocked every effort to build the wall. He's blocked every effort to deport illegal immigrants. He's blocked every effort to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. He's blocked every effort to pass Kate's Law, which I introduced, to lock up and have mandatory minimum sentences for violent criminals who repeatedly re-enter this country. Eric Adams' party created this problem, and they didn't just create it in the past. They are creating it today, and they intend to create it tomorrow. And they intend to create it going on and on and on and on. He says 110,000 people are destroying New York City. New York City has 8 million people in it. 110,000 is enough to destroy it. Guess what, Eric? How do you think McAllen, Texas feels? How do you think Del Rio feels? How do you think Brownsville feels? How do you think Laredo feels? How do you think El Paso feels? All of those are infinitely smaller cities than New York City, and they're getting swamped by much larger flows of immigrants. And by the way, the clowns in Eric Adams's parties, here's their response. Uh-oh, New York mayor's mad at us. We don't want 110,000 to come to New York. Let's put them all in Texas.
Just put a wall around Texas, right? Keep them all in Texas, keep them there. Well, and he also, if he wants to be mad at somebody, he should be mad at himself from 2021, because this is what he said in 2021 about illegal immigrants coming to New York City. Take a look.
When you think about it, the days I spent with our essential employees, a substantial number of them were undocumented. They were delivering our Uber Eats. They were stocking our stores. They were out in the streets, keeping our city running. We have to expand NYC Care to make sure everyone has health care. We need to make sure we have proper translation services in our schools.
He wants to expand everything.
Wow, if Mayor Adams heard that fool, think how mad he would be at that guy. Because that guy just invited all the illegal immigrants to New York City. The hypocrisy on this is massive.
Well, and it's not just the hypocrisy there. It's also the elitists in New York City. You've done The View. Ana Navarro, I had to deal with her for 7 years when I was fighting her at CNN. I feel like I still deserve a medal for that. But she's on The View. She's now angry, just like the people in Martha's Vineyard who declared a state of emergency when they got, 50 illegal immigrants and got rid of them in like
50.
12 hours, but clapped as they were kicking them out of their Martha's Vineyard. She's on TV losing her mind this week because she can't imagine this idea of having to deal with illegal immigrants. Keep them all down there in Texas. Take a look.
But frankly, I think we need to find, and we've dealt with this before. I lived in Miami. I was an immigrant in Miami in the 80s. You'll remember when we had the Mariel boat lift. Yes. 125,000 Cubans came in a matter of 6 months. It puts tremendous stress on a city, on a community, on the social services. They need to be resettled elsewhere.
Need to be resettled elsewhere. Like, I'm compassionate as long as it's not on my block or in my city or down by my 5-star Michelin restaurant that I love to go to.
So this needs to be the bumper sticker for every liberal in America. They need to be resettled elsewhere.
Yeah.
Not in my backyard, not in my bedroom, not in my living room. I don't want to see them, but send them to where those dirty deplorables live. Send them to red states. Send them to flyover country. You people aren't compassionate enough. Yeah. I don't want them here, is what she's saying. But let's send them to help educate the ignorant Americans. The contempt from the left for the people of America is astonishing.
It's also the hypocrisy. I do laugh about her because she actually owns, her family, like her husband, they own a hotel. Wonder if how many illegal immigrants they've opened up their hotel to. Not even their house, just their hotel. Like, you would think somebody would ask that question.
Let's not get crazy on that. No. You can't expect liberals actually to do anything. But I will say, all right, this next clip from The View really does capture it because well, just play it.
And I thought this country, with its big, Statue of Liberty, give me your week and all of this, is supposed to be the country that accepts people.
Yes.
And I'm disappointed in Mayor Adams.
Of course she is. Now, mind you, has she taken anyone in?
No.
No, of course not.
And Adams did say, hey, you might want to open your homes to illegal immigrants. Remember, he said that a couple months ago.
Excuse me, when you've got a penthouse overlooking Park Avenue, you might let someone in to scrub the floors briefly, but you better get out before the party starts. The utter hypocrisy. No interest in actually understanding what's going on. And by the way, the statute of limitations, look, I'm the son of an immigrant. We are a nation of immigrants. There's a right way to come. You come legally. That's how you come to the United States. But don't bother liberals to say that. She says, we need to be compassionate. By we, she means you.
Yeah.
Not her, you. And it is utter crap. Look, it was 2 years ago that I introduced legislation in the Senate, and it was legislation that said we need to change the ports of entry where we send illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard, to Nantucket, to Palo Alto, California, to the Hamptons, to Block Island, to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, where Joe Biden vacations, to every place that wealthy liberals sit and sip their Chardonnay. And remember, when I introduced that legislation, the county executive at Martha's Vineyard blasted me.
Yeah.
And he said, Cruz does not understand illegal immigration. Really, Skippy, is that the case? He said, he doesn't understand. He doesn't know what's going on. And he says, we in Martha's Vineyard would welcome illegal immigrants.
For 12 hours.
To Martha's Vineyard. And then, several months later, Ron DeSantis actually took him up on that and sent 50. Let's recall the numbers. There are between 20 and 30,000 people who live in Martha's Vineyard. 50 illegal immigrants landing in a community of 20 to 30,000 people. He immediately declared an emergency. He called in the National Guard, and he deported them within 24 hours. That's what liberals do.
Brought in more National Guard members than the actual number of illegals. It was like almost a 2-to-1 ratio. Like, for every one illegal, we'll bring in 2 guys with in military fatigues to deal with you.
And by the way, it's not just Eric Adams. It's the governor of New York. It's the governor of Massachusetts. It's the mayor of Washington, D.C., it's the mayor of Chicago, it's the mayor of San Francisco. They're all discovering, oh, wait, these policies that my party advocates, my party fights for, my party implements are really crappy policies that are hurting everybody. And it's like, oh, really?
Really, yeah. Oh, Fox News, one of the guys over there, Bill McGowan, put this tweet out, which I thought was pretty interesting. He said, from an awareness perspective, Texas busing migrants to sanctuary cities has been incredibly effective. That's why I'm like, double it. Like, it's working. That's the best money you can ever spend.
Yes.
Double it. DeSantis in Florida, double it. Any other state, double it. Fill the buses up and keep doing it because it's clearly working. None of these cities expressed concern about the border prior. Now, question mark, New York City mayor says city will be quote-unquote destroyed. Chicago begging now for federal help. MA activating their National Guard, and LA is now threatening to sue Governor Abbott. I mean, it's working.
But by the way, why isn't LA threatening to sue Joe Biden? Joe Biden's the one who's refusing to follow the law. Joe Biden's the one who's created the border crisis. And it's an amazing thing. Actually, put the next tweet up here.
This is a response, by the way, this tweet, which is pretty interesting. And at the front says, in Texas has only bused 40,000 people in total. So just 40,000 out of all that have come across. 2 million people have been released from the border and traveled in the U.S. interior. Only 2% took Abbott's buses. Question, where are the other 1.96 million people?
Well, and that actually understates it because you also have at least 1.4 million gotaways.
Yep.
All of them are there as well, so that takes you up to 3.5 million. You also have the people who escape that we don't know, that are not categorized as gotaways, because not everyone who gets in illegally is categorized as one or the other. So you're looking at 4, 5, 6 million people. And what are the Democrats doing? They're freaking out about 40,000 on buses.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter, listen, Joe Biden has been flying people into New York every week. Does Eric Adams not know Chuck Schumer's phone number? I can give it to him.
Well,
Mayor Adams, right? Mayor Adams, I'm going to make an offer to you. If you would like, I will give you Chuck Schumer's personal cell number because apparently you don't know how to contact your fellow New Yorker.
Y'all going to have dinner right down the street from each other.
Your fellow New Yorker could take up and schedule a vote this week to solve this problem. And so if you don't know how to contact him, let me help you.
Latest numbers are in, just to put it in perspective. Data shows 183,503 illegal immigrants were encountered attempting to cross the U.S.-Mexico border in July alone. That's a 27% increase in the crossings from last month. So month over month up 27%. Quote, more than 7.2 million illegal immigrants have crossed the southern border since Biden took office. Those are the newest numbers from July. This includes the nearly 5.8 million illegal immigrants that the Customs and Border Protection, as you mentioned, have encountered, and the more than 1.4 million gotaways that have escaped past Border Patrol in the U.S. so far this year. A reminder, the Biden administration was secretly flying illegals from the border into New York since at least the summer of 2021. They don't mention that, do they?
No, they don't at all. And they don't mention who can fix it. Greg Abbott doesn't have the ability to stop Joe Biden's open borders. Only Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the people running the executive, or for that matter, Chuck Schumer. Congress could act, but every single Democrat senator supports these open borders. Every single Democrat congressman supports these open borders, and we have proof of it because if they didn't, they would act to stop it. And they don't. Instead, they just blame a madman down in Texas.
I want to tell you about our friends at Augusta Precious Metals. You've been seeing what's going on in the economy. You've seen some of these bank failures. You've seen interest rates, for example, on loans hit a 21-year high for home loans right now. And a lot of people are wanting to protect their wealth, especially if you're in retirement or close to retirement. Well, let me tell you about Augusta Precious Metals. They do things differently when it comes to your IRA or your 401k and using a portion of it in gold to make sure that you are protecting your hard-earned dollars. Now, when you call Augusta Precious Metals, they actually do more than just send you an investor's guide on gold. That gives you background and understanding, historical context to what gold has done over periods of time. They actually do a one-on-one web conference with each and every one of you to make sure that you understand how it could affect your retirement and how it could help you preserve your wealth. Check out Augusta Precious Metals. Go online to AugustaPreciousMetals.com. You can also call them and find out and get the investor's guide on gold. Now, you'll get to do the web conference. That doesn't cost you a dime. It's free to see if gold can help you with your retirement planning. 877, the number 4, Gold IRA. That's 877, the number 4, Gold IRA. Or online at AugustaPreciousMetals.com. That's AugustaPreciousMetals.com. Senator, I want to move to something else that was shocking this week, and that was an issue of our Second Amendment. The New Mexico governor has decided that it is her duty to strip away the Second Amendment rights of everyone in her state. And she did it because she says crime's out of control. And she says, look, I don't really care about the consequence of this. I'm just going to do it anyway because I'm the governor. And I'm going to go rogue. Now, there's some conservatives that are upset about this because they're like, man, I kind of wish Republicans would act the same way when there's a problem. And instead of waiting on the federal government, just say, I don't care what the rules say. Let's just be proactive and let the courts figure it out afterwards. I want to talk about that in a moment, but I want to just go back to your initial reaction of seeing a governor sit there and tell her state, you don't have your Second Amendment rights under me. And I'm going to do this, and there's nothing you can say to stop me. You can't do your permits. You can't get your permits. And basically, I'm a dictator of the state until I get what I want.
Look, unfortunately, this is the consequence today. If you elect Democrats, they will come after your constitutional rights. It's who they are. They are the party of government power. If you vote for Democrats, you want the government to have power over you. You want the government to have power over your free speech. You want the government to have power over your religious belief. And you want the government to have power to disarm you and to ignore the Constitution. The one unifying factor of Democrats today is they are, I believe, a totalitarian party. They believe they are statists. They believe in government control. And you look at what the governor of New Mexico has done here. It is utterly, blatantly, brazenly, unapologetically lawless. It is actually, the two stories we're discussing in this podcast are interrelated. Joe Biden on the southern border has decided he's just going to ignore federal law. We've actually never had that happen in our nation's history, more than 2 centuries. Look, Barack Obama, I was not a fan of Barack Obama. I disagreed with a lot of things Barack Obama did as president. The amazing thing is on immigration, by and large, he followed the law. Other than DACA, with the rest of immigration, he followed the law. Joe Biden came in and did something that no president has ever done. He simply said, I don't give a damn what the law says. We're not going to follow it.
Whatever Trump did, undo it. And if that means flood the border, let's do it.
It is flagrant defiance of the law. And what the New Mexico governor is doing is the same thing, which is l'état c'est moi. The Sun King, I am the state. That is what, well, give a listen to how she explains to the people of New Mexico.
Now, I am sure as I go through the rest of this, there are going to be a lot of questions about whether or not we think we have the legal rights to do that. I am sure that before you write this, there will be a legal challenge. And I can't tell you that we win it, given all of the different challenges to gun violence laws and restrictions on individual firearm access and control. In that regard, I think it's time to talk about the absoluteness of the discussion and the current court actions that suggest that the Second Amendment is an absolute right and none of the others are. And I'm sure you're going to ask me what I think my chances are. And again, If it opens up the door to the kinds of public safety that keep kids safe, I'm willing to take it on.
Now, can I say this to put it in perspective so people understand how quickly this happened? She had this press conference September the 7th, okay? The executive order banning concealed carry for self-defense in cities like Albuquerque went in, guess what? On the 8th. There was no time to react for the people there. Her order, she said, I know you're going to be upset about this, but it's going to take effect tomorrow morning, or technically midnight, and last for, quote, 30 days, after which she made clear she will revisit the issue and may propose an extended ban, which I'm sure she will. And this governor's order, and these are from the governor's office, okay? So they basically said, we're going to suspend your Constitution and your constitutional rights, and we're going to ban open and concealed carry, even for licensed concealed carriers. So you've lost your right, even if you have your license, to carry that gun. So if you're caught with that gun, apparently you're going to go to jail now, even if you have a concealed carry permit to have it already. And she says, well, we're doing this to get rid of the gun violence, and so therefore it's worth it. So I'm suspending the Constitution. I'm suspending all your rights. And if you're caught with that gun that you have legally, that you've gotten the permit legally, we're still going to lock you up.
Well, her order is directed specifically to the county that Albuquerque is in, and to that big city. And look, Albuquerque votes Democrat, and so there is a lesson. If you vote Democrat, this is what the jackbooted thugs do. They come for your constitutional rights. That's what she's doing. She is purporting to say that any person in New Mexico and Albuquerque who carries a firearm, either concealed carries it or open carries it, will be arrested, will be put in jail. And mind you, the New Mexico legislature has passed a concealed carry licensing scheme. So there are people who have gone and gotten licenses, and the state has granted formal legal authority to conceal carry. And she says, I don't care. I don't care what New Mexico law is. I'm like Joe Biden. Joe Biden ignores federal law. Well, I ignore New Mexico law. So New Mexico law says if you have a concealed carry, you're allowed to conceal carry. Nope, I don't care. I'm a Democrat. Laws don't bind me. But look, beyond New Mexico law, the Second Amendment to the Constitution says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. What she is saying is you have no right to keep and bear arms. You cannot bear arms. What is bearing arms? What the Supreme Court has said is the right of the people, and that's actually the phrase in the Second Amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The right of the people is a term of art that the framers of the Constitution used to refer to an individual right. To keep and bear. Keep and bear are two different things. Keeping arms, or keeping arms in, say, your home, keeping arms, say, in your automobile, that is keeping arms. Bearing arms is to carry them for self-defense. What she is saying is in New Mexico, you no longer have a right to bear arms. Doesn't matter. If you're a single mom, you're in Albuquerque, you're going home late at night, you're worried about being mugged, you're worried about the criminals that are rising because Democrats are in power, well, you don't have the right to defend yourselves. What she's doing is laughably illegal. It's interesting. She says, well, some are going to ask, is this legal? And she kind of shrugs and giggles. It's sort of like the goofy, what do I care? What's that Constitution thing? That is the Democratic Party. Look, that shrug and giggle captures today's Democrat Party. And mind you, what she's doing, she says she's focused on crime. Interestingly enough, she's going after people who concealed carry. She doesn't point out a single crime that's happened in the state of New Mexico that was carried out by someone with a concealed carry permit.
And if there was that, she probably would have used that to her advantage. And that was a question a local reporter asked, like, how many of these murders that you're freaking out about in Albuquerque were done or committed by people that had a concealed carry permit? They don't answer the question because they can't answer the question.
Look, it's not about that. And by the way, they ought to freak out about the murders.
Yeah.
But you know what you do when you freak out about the murders? You go lock up the murderers. These numbskulls, she's not willing to lock up the real criminals. She's not willing to lock up the people who commit murder. She's not willing to lock up the carjackers. She's not willing to lock up the criminals. No, what she wants to do is disarm you, disarm everyone else who's law-abiding, which will cause more murders, which will cause more home invasions, which will cause more carjackings, and this is partisan ideology, utterly in disregard to the Constitution, to the Bill of Rights, to individual liberty, and to reason or facts or evidence.
Well, and look at what she also had to say to the people when she was, you know, the doubt that's coming in the room. I mean, there's people sitting next to her in law enforcement. They look like they're in a hostage video. Take a look.
If there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms. In this emergency, this 11-year-old and all these parents who have lost all these children, they deserve my attention to have the debate about whether or not in an emergency we can create a safer environment. Because what about their constitutional rights? I took an oath to uphold those too. And if we ignore this growing problem without being bold, I've said to every other New Mexican, your rights are subrogated to theirs. And they are not, in my view.
What about the mother who has a restraining order against an abusive ex who's carrying a firearm? What about the rights of that person?
No. If you're a single mom, you have no right to defend yourself in New Mexico, according to this governor. I will say, so this podcast, we do it 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's always audio. Most of our listeners are on audio. Typically, 1 day a week, we do it video as well. This is one of the video episodes. So if you happen to be listening on audio, you can also watch this episode on YouTube. You can watch about a third of our episodes on YouTube. And I would say, if you get a chance, go pull this up on YouTube and watch the clip we just played. You heard it, but what you didn't see if you weren't watching YouTube is the two gentlemen sitting on both sides of the governor, and I don't know who they are. One is wearing a police uniform. The other certainly looks like law enforcement. I don't know that I've ever seen two men more unhappy to be sitting at a table. They look miserable. They look like they want to puke on the table as she's saying, I've declared an emergency. And during this emergency, the people of New Mexico no longer have constitutional rights.
Isn't that what dictators do and tyrants in third world countries?
Emergency is always the excuse to strip your rights. And by the way, we just went through the COVID pandemic where the emergency excuse was used to strip the rights of millions of Americans.
Change the way we did our elections.
In a blatant abuse of power. And now suddenly it's an emergency. Guess what? By the way, I promise you 100%, I will wager $1,000 right now. We will have an emergency right before the election next year. You
mentioned that this week. I don't want any action on that at all because I know you're right.
Because it's so obvious. It's so transparent. They don't bother to hide it.
Yeah, they don't. I want to play one more clip with the governor. Before we do that, let me tell you about our friends at Chalk. If you're a guy and you deal with a real issue, which is getting older and fatigue setting in, then you need to check out Chalk, CHOQ.com. Why? Because they can help you boost your testosterone levels up to 20% over 90 days. Testosterone levels in this country and are actually around the world have dropped off a cliff. And if you feel like you're sitting around, you want to be more active, you want to get that strength and vitality back, then you should check out Chalk, CHOQ.com. That male vitality stack I've been taking now for months, it works. You can boost your testosterone levels up to 20% over 90 days. This is something that so many men have used, and they like it. You can go online. You can see the reviews. The natural herbal supplements are made right here in the US of A, and they're helping men just like you get off that couch, get back to doing what you love, working out, and not having to deal with that fatigue anymore. CHOQ.com/Ben. Now, here's the thing. Use the promo code Ben. You're going to get 35% off at checkout. Yeah, that's a big savings. So CHOQ.com/Ben. Use the promo code Ben. You'll get 35% off. CHOQ.com, promo code Ben. Lastly, Senator, I just want you to see the one last clip of her where she's trying to basically explain why it's okay for her to be a dictator, okay to be a tyrant, okay to suspend your constitutional rights. Take a look.
I can make the point that maybe they should be. And this is the point. I'm willing to do anything and everything within a shred of evidence-based effort.
So, number one, she has no evidence.
Yeah.
She hasn't cited any evidence. There is no evidence that disarming law-abiding citizens stops crime. Why? Because the evidence actually shows the opposite. That when you disarm law-abiding citizen, crimes goes up. You want to stop crime, and I want to stop crime. We know what stops crime. You go after the criminals, you go after the felons, you go after the fugitives, you go after and you lock them up, you put them in jail, you go after the murderers, you go after the carjackers. She's not willing to do that.
No.
The Democrats are not willing to do that. And so if she wants to focus on evidence, and by the way, a phrase she uses a lot, she says, no right is absolute. No right is absolute. Now, number one, nobody is arguing the Second Amendment right is absolute. For example, everyone agrees that we have laws in this country that say felons cannot possess a firearm. You can forfeit your Second Amendment rights. If you're a criminal, you can forfeit them. Now, mind you, the governor, along with Joe Biden, they don't like to enforce those laws. So Hunter Biden, it was illegal for Hunter Biden to possess a firearm. He did. He lied on the form to buy it. He's a crackhead. It is illegal for crackheads to possess firearms. See, the right's not absolute. You can forfeit it. But the Joe Biden Justice Department, they don't want to prosecute him for him. They wanted to give him a slap on the wrist. Initially, they want him not even to have to plead guilty to it. But when it comes to, when she says no right is absolute, what she means is you have absolutely no rights.
Yeah.
Because look what her edict is saying. It's not absolute. All right, I'll give you an example. If she said you can't walk through downtown firing your gun in the air, that would be actually a reasonable rule. If you fire your gun in the air walking through that downtown, they ought to arrest you because you could hurt someone doing that. But what she is saying is you have zero right to keep and bear arms in Albuquerque. You are not allowed to defend yourself. And so, Ben, if you happen to be driving through the streets of Albuquerque and some criminal tries to carjack you at a red light, you just better give them your car because you're not allowed to defend yourself. That is blatantly illegal. And I want to actually put up this tweet. All right, this is a tweet from Ted Lieu, the hard left-wing Democrat congressman from California. Here's the tweet, quote, I support gun safety laws. However, this order from the governor of New Mexico violates the U.S. Constitution. No state in the union can suspend the federal Constitution. There is no such thing as a state public health emergency exception to the U.S. Constitution. And I'm going to say something shocking. Bravo.
Yeah.
I actually retweeted Ted Lieu, and I said, I'm going to say something I've never said before. Ted Lieu is right.
Yeah.
Bravo. Thank you for being willing to speak up.
To state the obvious.
And this may well be a sign of the apocalypse. This is cats and dogs living together.
Yeah.
This is Ted Lieu being right. But Democrats have gotten so lawless now that it is completely indefensible.
Don't forget, we do the show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we have something new that is really cool. On Saturdays, we are now putting out a week in review. Some of the stories that are a little bit deeper in the podcast that maybe you missed, and we're putting them together for Saturdays, so make sure you grab that. Hit that follow button if you're listening on Apple, iTunes, subscribe, or auto-download wherever you're listening to this podcast. And on those in-between days, download my podcast, Ben Ferguson Podcast as well. I'll keep you updated on those in-between days with the latest breaking news in between shows here with Verdict. As always, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you back here in a couple of days.